If you're unfamiliar, Inside Number 9 is a half-hour anthology series about small casts of characters in enclosed locations. It's typically either a dark comedy, horror, some sort of bleak drama, or an experimental narrative, with elements of all of those sort of bleeding into one another. They take stabs at all kinds of narrative approaches. There's one told in reverse, a la Memento, one told in iambic pentameter, one told via CCTV cameras. Inside Number 9 is unique among this new wave of anthology shows that have gotten popular lately, in that while it's dark and twisted, it feels almost playful. While it doesn't break the suspension of disbelief or the fourth wall at any point, I found that after a while I started going into it with the fact that this would be Shearsmith and Pemberton, the pair behind it, utilising their storytelling skills to confound me firmly in mind. The fact that they write it together and are usually the main characters from setting to setting and character to character, they kind of start to feel like magicians performing tricks with your perception, and they're always keeping you guessing right up until the very end. And they always somehow manage to tie everything together so neatly in just half an hour. While they do have their off days and less interesting conceits, Inside Number 9 always manages to be this incredibly tight little package of black comedy and horror. Even if some of the episodes are less than compelling, it rarely if ever feels like it sits on the extreme ends of the scale between padded and rushed. Episodes like 12 Days of Christine stunned me in just how efficient they were, and 12 Days of Christine is a fucking massive part of a life story to cram into 30 minutes in the same series of rooms, and it manages that so beautifully. Shearsmith and Pemberton are known for their brilliant horror comedy show Psychoville, which I also recommend, and earlier and more prominently for being 50% of The League of Gentlemen, which started life as a stage comedy act and was then adapted into one of the most bizarre and obtuse TV shows that I've ever fucking seen. League of Gentlemen was mostly a sketch show about the inhabitants of a fictional small and secluded English countryside village called Royston Vasey, but it played out very differently to most sketch shows that you might be familiar with. The show just sort of drifts between locations and characters, and elements of earlier sketches from earlier episodes might start bleeding into the following ones. The exaggeration of British country folk is taken to its absolute extreme. Tubbs and Edward are strange and disturbing inbreds who seem to be unaware that the world beyond Royston Vasey even exists. Jokes like that have been part of Britain's cultural ethos for years, but League of Gentlemen's extremity and its absurdity was what made it stand out to me. It relies just as much on horror as it does on comedy as well, as a means of creating this bizarre circus-like experience that elicits a strange reaction in the viewer that's somewhere between laughter and dread at what's going to happen to the characters next. Getting back to Inside Number 9, I'm now going to go through my top 9 episodes. You get it, right? 9, because Inside Number 9... I'm fucking wasted on you people! Anyway, before I go in, the experience of Inside Number 9 is heavily reliant on twists and revelations, so you should know that there will be some spoilers in these. The big ones start at number 8, so if you like what you've heard, go take a look before watching the rest. Anyway, first up I got an honourable mention. Though what would have been number 10 on this list if I weren't hell-bent on it being a top 9 because it fits. Haha, aren't I clever? Why not like the video for the cleverness? So, honourable mention. No, not number 10, shut up caption. The Devil of Christmas. Since my subscriber base is mostly made up of Doctor Who fans, if you're new to the show, you can't go wrong with starting with the Christmas special from season 3. It's just a fucking treat for fans of hokey 60s, 70s and 80s sci-fi and horror TV, particularly shows like Tales of the Unexpected. The scripting, acting and special effects are stunningly bad, but it's intentionally and openly done that way as a loving pastiche of this era of pulpy TV horror. And if you're as familiar with their reference points as I am, you will start cracking up, because it's almost impossible to tell that this isn't a real show from the 70s. It's a bloody achievement because it's hard to make a bit of drama that looks and sounds this realistically bad on purpose. And what that does is it throws the viewer off guard for when things get all too disturbingly real later in the episode, when it actually decides to address the stylistic choice that they've gone for. Anyway, number 9. Seance Time. If you'd like a good encapsulation of what Inside Number 9's going for, you can't go wrong with this one. Seance Time cleverly reworks a good old-fashioned haunting into a story about the filming of a prank TV show about a fake haunting that turns out to have a bit more truth to it, hidden just below the campy and over-the-top shroud of light entertainment. Episode 6 in the series is usually the one with the highest emphasis on horror, but Seance Time's also full of these wonderful little moments of colour and character that make it a really funny and upbeat watch, before it pulls the rug out from under your feet towards the end, where it provides fresh context to some of the more comedic imagery that's been brought up during the runtime. Number 8. To Have and to Hold. Big Finish friends will be pleased to see Liv Chenka show up in Inside Number 9, but then horrified to see Nicola Walker playing the long-suffering wife in a doomed loveless marriage to a Joseph Fritzl-type character who's keeping a woman locked up in a soundproof room in his basement. The long and uninterrupted scenes of marital tedium may be tough to sit through. You may start to think that they've gone on for far too long and need some cutting down, but soon you come to realise that that's part of the point and that they enhance the experience. The highly realistic portrait of a failing marriage illustrates just how good this guy's gotten at hiding the monster that he really is. Because people like this are all too real, and the way that they get away with doing what they do is that they're good at hiding who they really are beneath the dull and monotonous veil of everyday domesticity. That's what makes To Have and to Hold such a thoroughly unnerving watch. Number 7. Zanzibar. Just as a piece of writing alone, Zanzibar is absolutely fucking gorgeous, although it's probably more a writer's episode than an audience's one. It's a successful recreation of a Shakespearean comedy for modern times, told entirely in iambic pentameter and with many scenes of characters directly addressing the audience with monologues and asides, and it also contains a lot of farcical and puerile sex and shitting comedy that was in Shakespearean comedies and often go unnoticed by bored students who find it impenetrable. It's very over the top and probably a bit more suited to stage than TV, but this is probably the most I've ever laughed at a production involving Shearsmith and Pemberton, and given I'm a huge fan of everything they've ever done, that is a massive compliment. Number 6. A Quiet Night In. One of the simplest episodes of the show is also one of the most effective. A Quiet Night In's like this incredibly morbid little Buster Keaton movie about a pair of stupid, misguided burglars. I wasn't expecting to like A Quiet Night In as much as I did, because the death of silent movies has kind of completely changed the way that people respond to art. If you're not already into silent movies, like I'm really not, it can end up being a massive turn-off if a modern production's trying it as an experiment. I had to be badgered into watching The Artist for about 6 months until I gave in and enjoyed the hell out of it. A Quiet Night In's a superb production of a short silent comedy movie with an updated modern aesthetic. It's puerile, childish and farcical throughout, but it's uniquely charming in its own warped little way. Number 5. Once Removed. Structurally speaking, Once Removed is a fucking masterpiece. While it arguably kinda just apes Memento's gimmick of being told backwards, the reason for doing it's a bit different, cause Once Removed isn't about memories and mystery so much as it's about context. It opens with the last 10 minutes of the narrative and then goes to the previous 10 minutes each time, and if you play it in order it makes sense, but when viewed backwards like this, the context of each character's actions are changed as you don't know why they're there and why they're doing what they're doing. You assume that certain characters' actions are innocent until another layer of what looks like reality is removed to reveal something more sinister. While it may not hold up as well on repeat viewings, its focus on actively playing with the way that the viewer perceives events makes it a truly standout moment in the show. Number 4. The Harrowing. Reece Shearsmith wrote the introduction for the reissue of this Robert Aikman collection that I read recently, and Aikman's clearly had a big influence on Inside Number 9, and he particularly came to mind with this one because Aikman was known for slow and subtle horror stories with strange characters with weird obsessions. So a young girl arrives to house sit in this creepy old mansion where the eccentric siblings take care of their disabled brother who lives in the attic. There's also some nice little details synonymous with gothic horror, the paintings of hell lining the walls of the house, the purposefully low temperature, but it's all justified by the characters throughout the runtime. The bizarre explanations that offer reasons for the surface details of the story make it feel weird and dreamlike and force a nervous laugh on occasion, but they also instill this feeling of unease and dread building up to that fantastically dark and terrifying conclusion that gives many classic horror movies a run for their money. Number 3. The Riddle of the Sphinx. This one was a slow burner, but when it starts violently pummeling you with those plot twists, it becomes impossible to look away. As I just mentioned, horror stories featuring characters with weird obsessions is a driving force for Shearsmith and Pemberton, and the web of secrets and lies that get untangled bit by bit over the course of the runtime lines up so well with the premise of a character who writes crossword puzzles. While it's not strictly speaking a comedy, I just couldn't help but laugh as more revelations came out one after another, and it got bigger, darker, more twisted and fucking ludicrous, and it's so intricate and complex, and every little bit of it means something. The attention to detail that's gone into Riddle of the Sphinx is fucking astounding. The script for Riddle of the Sphinx is such a perfect symbiosis of character, plot and theme. Number 2. Cold Comfort. I'm shocked that this one had a lukewarm reception, because I think Cold Comfort was absolutely fucking genius in every way. Though I am a sucker for a narrative gimmick and I've never seen anything like it before, so that might be a part of it. You're probably going to have to have seen this one to hear me talk about it at all, because obviously I will be bringing up the ending, which was just the most gorgeous use of misdirection that I've ever seen on TV. As I started by mentioning, Shearsmith and Pemberton are like storytelling magicians, and by using the same CCTV camera feeds throughout the runtime, they paint this highly realistic portrait of an office of a Samaritans-like crisis hotline that sets the stage for the incredibly disturbing story that unfolds with the nuisance caller. By being so naturalistic, they've trained your focus on Pemberton throughout the runtime that habitually you're not looking where you should be looking during that fucking genius long-running and uninterrupted final take.
I told her son where you worked.
Indeed. Yeah?
Number 1. The 12 Days of Christine. As I mentioned earlier, 12 Days of Christine is one of the most efficient bits of storytelling that I've ever seen. It expertly distills a significant chapter of a life story into 30 minutes and a simple series of rooms. Sheridan Smith gives a fucking astonishing performance as Christine and totally sells the hell out of this edited highlights reel of some of the most important moments in her life, from when she first met her partner to her kid's first day at school. And with the slow and creeping background elements like the reappearance of her deceased father and the strange ghostly figure in the Mac, they start to provide the episode's unique structure with meaning right up until that fucking incredible moment where you finally realise what's going on here. Though it is more drama-oriented than comedy or horror, it's a masterclass in experimental storytelling and the perfect distillation of the mission statement for what I personally think is the best show that the TV industry's offered us in recent memory.